Hello, I am Seamus Dunhu of EVE University. You may have watched my video series How to Survive EVE Online, and since then you may have also watched some of my standalone tutorial videos that I've put up on my YouTube channel since then. And throughout all of those videos, I very subtly hint that it would be a good idea for new players to join EVE University because EVE Online is an extremely deep and complex game, and being a part of EVE University will help you get your feet firmly planted in the ground as you get ready for your adventures in outer space. Of course, with your feet planted in the ground, how you're going to get into outer space, I guess that logic doesn't work out as well as I had hoped. Anyway, so you're finally in the game, and you see in the news and login screen something about EVE University suspending its Wartime Standard Operating Procedures. And if you didn't see that article, let me read that off to you now. Let me bring up the article. EVE University announced removal of no... Well, that's not worded correctly. EVE University announces removal of Wartime Standard Operating Procedures. In a startling change of pace, EVE University has announced a temporary suspension of their Wartime Standard Operating Procedure. This policy, which forbids ratting, mining, and hauling while under war deck, has served to protect many new pilots from losing ships and modules they really couldn't afford to lose. According to Erdolf Delrar, quote, "The reasons for the SOP have faded into legend," unquote, and many new pilots suffer under the restrictions. So therefore came the decision to temporarily suspend all normal wartime rules. According to Delrar, they expect to see an increase in war decks during this time, believing there are a number of Blue Corps who would war deck them for the fun of it. A member of E-Uni said, quote, "I understand that the SOP might be boring to some members, but I feel it is necessary. People that are questioning the SOP will see by themselves what happens when you are out there alone in a player versus environment setup and no help around," unquote. Members of the corporation seem to be cautiously optimistic about this change, although several have also stated that they plan to keep to the standard operating procedure regardless. The SOP will be suspended for 1 month, and after that remain suspended until the majority of E-Uni members vote for its return. For a new player, that's probably a very confusing news article. What does that all mean? What are they talking about? First, let me review some basics about the game mechanics. I am here in Alljet, security level 0.6, which is high security space. Any solar system with 0.5 or higher security level is high security space. And normally, when another player shoots at you unprovoked in high security space, the Concord police show up to rip them to tiny little pieces. This might not happen fast enough to save your ship, but the aggressors are guaranteed to be destroyed. As a matter of fact, the guarantee is so firm that anyone who somehow commits an unprovoked violent action in high security space and escapes the wrath of Concord gets banned for exploiting. They lose their account. Alright? So, that's normal. Anyone shoots at you high security space, they get Concord tokened. It is, however, possible for player corporations and player alliances to pay Concord a fee to formally declare war against another player corporation or player alliance. When Concord is paid the war declaration fee, Concord sends out notifications to both sides saying that a war is about to start, and in 24 hours fighting can legally begin. So both sides have that formal notice that the war is about to start up. Alright, 24 hours warning, they can get prepared, or anybody who doesn't want to participate in the war can leave a player corporation and just go back to an NPC corporation, like the Scope, or Aliastra, or Percone, or Deep Core Mining, or something like that. Alright. And just to show you how to check the status of wars, you can go to Neocom, Corporation, the Wars tab, the Other Wars tab, and you can click the Select button at the bottom of the window, and you can type in the name of the player corporation or alliance. If the corporation is in an alliance, you have to type in the name of the alliance. So if I type in EVE University, that's not going to turn up the actual EVE University Corporation. Not the real EVE University Corporation, at any rate. EVE University is part of the Ivy League Alliance, so I have to type in Ivy League. And here we go, Ivy League, double left click, and this is a list of the wars that Ivy League is involved in right now, as of the time of filming. Yes, that's 10 wars. Yes, that is a bit excessive. So, as of right now, any of these 10 player corporations or alliances can legally open fire on EVE University pilots in high security space without Concord intervention. The reverse is also true. EVE University pilots can fire on any one of these 10 player alliances or corporations also without Concord intervention. So if two war targets are fighting each other in high security space, Concord's going to say, there's a formal war declaration in effect, notifications went out, we're not getting involved. Now, if any of these people start shooting neutrals unprovoked, they're still going to get Concord-opened. A war declaration is not a license to open fire on neutrals. It's only a license to open fire on whoever you declared war against, or whoever declared war against you. Now, most of the time that... about half the time, the university is usually at peace. There are no war declarations in effect most of the time, with the exception of Human After All and the Veldspar Defense Force, which are pre-arranged wars with the university used for training purposes most of the time. So, generally about half the time, Ivy League is at peace, and in the university, members of EVE University generally have a great degree of freedom in what they can do. They can go running missions, they can go mining if they want to, they can go do exploration stuff using core probes, they can do hauling, they can do station trading, they can do space trading. There's a wide degree of freedom. We don't require our students to participate in any particular kinds of activities. From time to time, however, somebody will get it into their heads that they can pad their kill board. And a kill board is a record of their kills and losses in PvP activities. Somebody will get it into their heads that they can pad their kill boards by declaring war against a player alliance with 2,000 members whose expressed primary purpose is to teach new players. Oh look, it's a corporation full of 2,000 noobs. That's gonna be a lot of easy targets. No. The university has been involved in quite a number of wars over the years since the university was first created, I believe, back in 2004. Why am I guessing? I'm gonna open up people and places. Corporation, EVE, University. Right-click, show info. Here we go. So the EVE University Corporation was created March the 15th, 2004. Right? So the university has been involved in quite a number of wars. Now, the university can and does still teach classes when a real war is in effect. But it does put some limits on how the university teaches certain kinds of classes. So we prefer to be at peace rather than at war most of the time for the sake of our class schedule, but classes still go on even during wartime. So that doesn't stop. Usually, the university is trying to discourage war declarations, and over the years, the university came up with a set of policies which are called the Wartime Standard Operating Procedures. Now, this video is not meant to be a class on Introduction to War, so I'm not going to bore you with the details, but I will point you to where you can find the Wartime Standard Operating Procedures that I'm talking about. So if you go to wiki.eveuniversity.org, and then look over here for the Wartime Standard Operating Procedures, this is the document that all EVE University pilots are usually required to follow whenever there's a war in effect. And just to give you a summary of the highlights, the entire purpose of the university's wartime rules has 5 objectives: deny the enemy easy kills of helpless non-combat ships, deny the enemy easy kills of poorly fitted ships, deny the enemy any kills of high-value ships that will look good on his killboard, deny the enemy any chance to banter or smack talk with us, deny the enemy any enjoyment from the conflict. These are the rules, the self-imposed rules, that the university generally follows whenever a real war is in effect. That is, any war other than Veldspar Defense Force or Human After All. So, usually when we have a war in effect, all members of EVE University follow these rules, the Wartime Standard Operating Procedures. And the general effect of these rules is that whoever declared war against us does not find the war to be fun. They can't find any easy targets. Whenever they do come across university pilots, it's either lone pilots traveling in extremely cheap ships trying to get from point A to point B, or they encounter gigantic EVE University fleets of doom. And ideally, by EVE University fleets of doom, we're usually talking about 100 to 200 pilots. Right? So war targets come up when they do find an EVE University target to shoot at, they suddenly find themselves fighting 100 to 200 Unistas. Ideally. Granted, that's kind of small compared to the scale of the null security sovereignty wars. But we're primarily an Empire Space Corporation. We operate mostly in high and low security, and sometimes in the bordering NPC null security regions. So these are the rules that we normally operate under. And while in peacetime, members of EVE University have a large degree of freedom in what they can do, during wartime, for the sake of making wars go away, almost all of those freedoms go away. So any Unistas who actually stay in the EVE University Corporation for the duration of the war, it is expected that they actually want to participate in the war, that they want to go out on PvP fleets, that they want to fight the war targets. So there's a lot of restrictions that we normally put on university pilots during wartime. Again, this is not going to be an introduction to war class, so I'm just summarizing the WSOP very briefly. What it is, why it exists. Now, with that said, the Wartime Standard Operating Procedures are very restrictive. And not all of our new pilots, but some of our new pilots tend to get confused as to why the WSOP needs to be so restrictive for the sake of the university. So the Directorate and the Admiralty, that is the EVE University Directors and the Admirals of the Ivy League Navy, have decided that for 1 month, starting from, I believe, yesterday, September the 18th, and going until October the 16th, we're going to operate without enforcing the Wartime Standard Operating Procedures. Just as a demonstration of what things used to be like in ye olden days, before the Wartime Standard Operating Procedures were actually ever created. So that's why the Wartime Standard Operating Procedures are being suspended, and that's also why, besides the Human After All and Veldspar Defense Force training wars, we've also got 8 real wars going on. At least 8 real wars as of the time of filming. That number might very well go up or down over the course of the month. So what does this mean for you as a new player who just got into the game, EVE Online, and has been watching my videos, and has been following my subtle hints that maybe you should be joining EVE University? What does this mean for you? Well, if you actually do join EVE University today, September the 19th, or you join at any point while this no WSOP month is going on, You're going to be joining a player corporation that is still going to be dedicated to teaching new players the game, and will still provide cheap frigates and modules for free that you can use to go out and learn various stuff like player versus player combat and how to be part of a fleet. But you're going to be doing so at a time when there are 8 active war declarations going on, involving a sum total of I am not sure how many other players at the same time. I believe some of these alliances involved have at least 100 capsuleers each. Granted, some of them may be alts, but that's still lots and lots of players that the university is going to be at war with. Lots and lots of players who can fire at you in high security space unprovoked. Now, since the university is not enforcing its wartime standard operating procedures, you can go do whatever you want. The problem is, you're doing so while war declarations are in effect, so whoever the university is at war with can try destroying your hauling ships, can try destroying your mission running ships, can scan you down while you're running a mission in high security space, warp into your mission, jump through the acceleration gates and kill you, alright, all without Concord intervention. Concord is not going to intervene because these wars are in effect. You could wind up losing a significant amount of ISK worth of ships, and if you're not careful, you could very easily wind up being broke. First and foremost and oldest adage in EVE Online, don't fly what you can't afford to lose. With that said, if you're going to participate in EVE University player versus player fleets, the university will provide you for free cheap Tech 1 frigates and the cheap Tech 1 modules to go with them that will help you contribute to an EVE University fleet of doom, either as a tackler or an electronic warfare frigate. One of the Crowd Control Productions developers, at least a developer or a community manager, I'm not sure which now, CCP Wrangler, has been quoted as saying, EVE Online is not designed to look like a cold, dark, and harsh place. It's designed to be a cold, dark, and harsh place. Keeping that quote in mind, if you join EVE University during the No Wartime Standard Operating Procedures month, you're going to be coming into probably a pretty crazy example of this, taken to an insane extreme. Alright, so you're going to be operating in high security space where lots of other players can legally open fire on you without Concord intervention. You can follow the Wartime Standard Operating Procedures document anyway if you like as a member of the university. At the very least, it does constitute a listing of good best practices. You're not required to follow this document, but you can if you want to. But at least for this month, for this small number of weeks, you should know what it is that the university is up to and what it is that you're getting into. Most of the time, it's not like this. Alright? Most of the time, we're usually at peace about half the time, and at war with somebody else half the time, and operating under wartime standard operating procedures, or if whoever declared war against us isn't actually bringing a fight, and not logging in, we might go to a slightly more relaxed form of the Wartime Standard Operating Procedures. You can read all the details about that in the wiki article, in the UniWiki article that I showed you a few minutes ago. Now, if player versus player activity and all sorts of crazy PvP situations sounds like fun to you, go ahead, join the university. There will usually be fleets going out every day, and if there isn't a fleet being formed, you can as a member of the university, you can always create your own fleet. The university permits even its newest recruits, day 1 recruits, to try and form their own PvP fleet and lead the fleet to go and hunt some targets. Usually it's a good idea for such recruits trying to form their own fleet on their very first day to have somebody more experienced tagging along to give them advice, but the university is a teaching institution. That's why we exist. If player versus player activity isn't your thing, and you don't really feel like operating under a war declaration, you can stay in an NPC corporation, or you can form your own one-man player corporation so that you don't have the NPC corp tax to deal with. You can apply to join EVE University and talk to the personnel officers and explain that you want to join after the no WSOP month is over, when the university is once again at peace. They will make a note and if they accept your application, they will make a note of it, and they will say, okay, put in a real in-game application once the university is at peace. We've made a note that your application formally, as far as we're concerned, has been accepted. So I hope that this clears up some of the confusion that new players will very likely have about what no WSOP month is and how it would affect them as they're trying to get into EVE University and learn more about the game. Even if you're not part of the EVE University Corporation, you can still create an EVE University forum account, and from there join the EVE University Mumble and sit in the public lounge. And you can ask questions about game mechanics, about how to run missions, about anything else. You can ask questions in the public lounge. And whoever happens to be in the EVE University Mumble will try to help provide you with useful answers and advice. Case in point, whenever I'm logged into the game and not making videos like this, I am usually on the EVE University Mumble. So, with all the information presented, I leave the choice to you. Don't fly what you can't afford to lose. Fly safe, and thank you for watching.